Let's start with tall trees and colorful leaves. For the rest of the settings, I'll put on the screen right now, and we're going to use Rev Animated. Now you can also use Deliberate, Dream Shaper, Realistic Vision, even RPG. In fact, you can use any one of these filters for a decent landscape image. Rev Animated tends to give you a bit more of an artistic feel, so we're going to go with that today. Similar to the previous video where we went over some basic prompting, today I want to go through a more practical exercise on building your own prompts. Now that we have a starting point, this is going to be our main subject, and then we're going to build around it. Now I can sit here and tell you all the common prompts that people use, but if you simply think logically, you'd be surprised of the results that you can achieve. Think about what else you want in your scene. Perhaps we want to add a sky, but not just a regular sky. In the prompt, we'll add iridescent neon sky. Because the beautiful thing about AI is that you can create anything you can imagine. So what we're doing here is creating structure. We have our elements of trees and the sky, foreground and background. But to provide more depth, perhaps we want to add other elements within the prompt. And in this case, I'm going to add mountains in the background. Personally, I feel like there is one more element that I'd love to see in this image, and that's waterfalls. In the prompt, we'll add long flowing waterfalls. Notice how most of these words are just practical words that you can come up with. If we quickly review where we started with just the tall trees, we added the iridescent neon skies along with the mountains in the background. Now at this point, this is where I like to expand on all the elements that we've just added. Otherwise known as modifiers, these are supporting prompts that will enhance your image. Let's focus on the trees. We don't want just your regular everyday trees. Think over-exaggerated, bigger words. In my case, I'm going to use mystical and magical. Now, how can we over-exaggerate this? Perhaps we want them towering towards the clouds, over and beyond. Now, it's quite possible you won't get that exact result, but you may get some pretty creative results. You see the clouds in the middle here, and a few more clouds appearing in the background. Always remember lighting. There are many ways to approach lighting, but for landscapes, I tend to use words like sunset, sunrise, cloudy, moody. This will often set the tone, and I don't want just the sunset. I'd also love to see a sun flare. As we build the prompt, I always want you to think about the small details, because it's these small details that make the biggest difference. We have our sunset lighting and a slight sun flare. Now that we have a solid foundation, I like to further complement the prompt with more modifier words. As I always say, think like a thesaurus. The overall general image I want to portray here is a fantastical summer landscape. And I encourage you to use your own words, your own descriptions, and it's highly likely you have a wider vocabulary than I do. These particular modifier words, best quality, masterpiece, 8K, especially 8K, you don't actually get an 8K image. It's more of an illusion, if anything, but it does help to improve the look and feel of your image. To further enhance the separation of lighting, we're going to add volumetric lighting and global illumination. And finally, to give it a little bit of artistic flair, we will add fantasy art, oil on canvas, and dreamcore. Remember, you can change these words to whatever you see fit. You could use watercolor instead of oil, or acrylic. Instead of fantasy art, you can put digital illustration. Before we move on, let's recap and look at the images that we developed along the way. Personally, I would have been very happy with any one of these images. But what I'm trying to show you today is why create something that already exists. The beautiful thing about creating AI images is that you could create anything that you can imagine. Ironically, I really like this last image, and we're going to build around this image and expand it just a little. Extending the image should not be too difficult, but we want to consider a few things. The sun flare looks great to me. We don't need that in the prompt, so we're going to remove that. And we're going to decrease the size of the generation box to 512 by 512. And now we will start to expand the image. Now it's quite possible that you may not get a good result right away. That's normal. That may tend to happen. One of the tricks that I do is that I make sure that I have a lot of information on this side of the box to fill this side. And you often want to remove elements that you no longer need. Here's a good example of a result that I don't want. I can Control Z and regenerate it, or we could have even used the object eraser. And if you have results here that don't look very good, don't worry about it. We can come back to it and fix it later. Let's finish off the rest of this area. Let's do a little bit of the left side of the image. And I'd also like to see a bit more water down here and maybe more of the sky. If you are doing this on a desktop, Control Enter is your shortcut to generate. I really like how the water is flowing here. It's got a little bit of the reflection as well. And you'll notice I'm just doing little increments at a time. That seems to work better for landscapes as opposed to doing a big chunk at a time. Let's see if we can get a little bit of the treetops showing. Sometimes you'll get results like this that just doesn't fit the image. Part of that too is for a corner like this, you want more information here and here. Typically it will blend a lot better just like that. We can fix the top a little later. If we look at the image side by side, here's our starting image and our finishing image. As I said, we can touch up these areas even more just to make them blend a little better. Shortcut key is E to erase. So we're going to erase this whole area here and even this area here at the corner. Hit G for your generation box and we'll delete some of the prompt, just leaving the iridescent neon sky and everything else. Remember, there's no need to rush at this point. Take your time. If it doesn't generate the image you want, you can always undo and redo. To select the image, shortcut key V, click on the image. You'll now notice we have some basic adjustments for opacity, brightness, contrast, and saturation. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the colors, brightness. The contrast, perhaps we can turn up just a tad to deepen the blacks and the shadows just a little bit. Turn down the saturation if we wanted to, or increase it. Assuming you're happy with this image, to download it, all you have to do is right click and you'll see a download option there. Or at the top left, there's also a download option here. Simply click on save and that will save locally to your hard drive. Now I hope you got something out of this video. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see next. As we look at the community's images here, remember, yes, there's a proper way to prompt. There is some structure to follow, but feel free to be creative, experiment, and as I always say, your limit is your own creativity. Until the next one, this is Playground AI.